Hello, this is Lori Fisher from Call Tracking Metrics, and we are here for the weekly webinar about getting a fast start to your Call Tracking Metrics accounts. Just
Yes.
getting the screen share up and running, and while I do that, just a few logistical notes for this session. You'll notice that when you logged into the screen share, you've got your Join.me toolbar in the upper right. If you haven't already, I'd recommend using the chat icon. If you have any questions, if anything comes up, you can definitely use that little chat icon to ask any questions. Also, I'd recommend muting your phones so that we can avoid background noise. And what we'll try to do is we will go through questions at the end. We'll leave 10 or 15 minutes at the end. And if you have anything urgent that comes up, please definitely feel free to pop.
Okay.
So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and bring up our screen share. Okay, give me 1 second here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So in terms of an agenda, there's 3 main areas that we like to cover typically. We like to start by talking about tracking numbers and the different ways that you want to set up and use your tracking numbers. We'll talk about how those tracking numbers can be dynamically shown on your website and some of the different ways to use them. And then we'll talk through reporting. So what are the critical reports to be aware of and best practices for integrating them into your workflow. And then finally, we'll talk about the tools and administration of your account. So important settings to be aware of and some of the integrations to be aware of. So with that, let's go ahead and start by talking about tracking numbers. So as you started setting up your accounts, if you haven't done this already, you probably want to kind of get used to this concept of a tracking number. Basically, it is a phone number that's either appearing on your website or it's appearing in some other advertising medium. And as calls come into those phone numbers, you're able to attribute those calls back to the source or the advertising channel that's associated to the number. In general, you want to set up a tracking number for each advertising source you want to track. So you want to have one for each of the major channels that you're putting money towards in particular so that you're able to associate an ROI to that investment. And in our system, tracking numbers need just 2 things. They need a receiving number, which is a place where you're going to be routing the calls to. So this would be like your office number or your cell phone number, or it can be lots of different places, and we'll go through the different ways to set all that up. And it also needs a source, which, as I mentioned, is an advertising channel, and that's going to be what you're tracking with that particular number. So as we're thinking about sources, you'll notice in our system we have 2 kind of main kinds of sources that you can track with our numbers. The first type is on-site source, and this is used for any of your online advertising. It's situations where you're going to be displaying a tracking number on your website. That's why it's called on-site, so you can think of that as on your website. So sources like AdWords, any display advertising you're doing, organic searches, any social media sources you're wanting to track, basically any channels that are driving traffic to your website would be considered an on-site source. An off-site source is for all those other areas off the web. So TV ads, radio ads, print ads, brochures, anywhere where you're going to be putting a phone number somewhere else and you're going to be tracking calls coming off of those items. Those are off-site sources. So that distinction is important because in the first scenario, in cases where you're driving traffic to your website, you're going to want to think about using our dynamic number insertion. And that happens using our dynamic tracking script. The script is a short piece of JavaScript that goes on your website, and what it's going to do on your website is it's actually going to change the phone number that appears on your website if people come through one of the sources you're tracking. So it's swapping the phone number if people are coming through your advertising channels. It won't change the phone number if someone comes through a source that you're not tracking with your tracking numbers. And it's also tracking important information about your website visitors, like where they're coming from, which pages they're viewing. And that's important because then as those people make phone calls, we can then tell you the exact history and activity that person had on your website. And the way it basically works, that code, is it's looking for your phone number on your website, and when it finds it, it'll swap it to a tracking number if someone's coming through one of your sources. Now, one of the other things to keep in mind about the code is it's also going to cookie your website visitors, so that we remember the original way that they came to your website. This is helpful because a lot of times people will maybe like click on an AdWords ad and they go to your website today, and then maybe 2 days from now they do a Google organic search for you and they come through that way. You want to know that that person actually originally came through that Google AdWords ad, and so we remember the original way that they came to you, and we associate them to that original way, and they'll continue to see the tracking number associated to that original way that they came to your site. Now, people often ask, at that point, start thinking about it, how are you able to match website visitors to each of my phone calls? And there is an algorithm that we developed that makes those matches, and it looks at all the information that we have collected about your website visitors and your callers, and it matches them up. And it does it immediately as soon as your phone starts ringing, so that we can immediately tell you as soon as your phone's ringing who this person is, which website visitor are they. And it's looking at things like geography and activity and past history to make those matches. Now, as you think about setting up your tracking numbers, you probably are thinking, I wonder how many tracking numbers I need. And in general, as you think about particularly like off-site channels, so like your channels that are off of your website, in those scenarios, you want to just kind of be as granular as you want your reporting to be. So if you have one tracking number for all your TV ads, that may be fine, but you're not going to know which TV ad led to each call. So you want it to think about how granular do I need to know which TV ad led to this call so that I can make the appropriate resource allocation decisions. For your on-site sources, so for any of your online sources, you do want to use a rule of thumb to make sure that you have enough tracking numbers for your traffic. The rule of thumb you want to use is generally one tracking number for every 40 daily visitors. So in the example here, if you have 400 visits a day from Google AdWords, divide that by 40, and you probably want to have about 10 tracking numbers that are in your account that are associated to the source of Google AdWords. Now, the reason for that is you may recall in the previous slide I talked about that algorithm that matches website visitors to callers. If you don't have enough phone numbers, if all of your AdWords visitors are seeing the same tracking number, it starts to get very hard for our system to be able to match a website visitor to a phone call because there's so many website visitors seeing the same tracking number. So it's a way for you to continue to get reliable data in your matching of visitors to calls. So you can keep that rule of thumb in mind. What happens is if you have, like, for example, if you had 10 tracking numbers associated to the source of Google AdWords, you have a pool of AdWords numbers. And we will load balance how many visitors see those tracking numbers across the day. And you won't have to worry about them seeing one number one day and another number the next day. We remember the AdWords number we showed them today, and we will show them that same number tomorrow. So we remember which one from the pool we showed them. So the next thing we want to go through is kind of how to set up your new numbers. And so the first thing you want to do is, you'll go into your account. I'm going to hop into one of our demo accounts here. And you want to make sure that, particularly if you're in an agency plan where you're going to have multiple accounts, you want to make sure that you're in the right sub-account. Because if you're in an agency or enterprise plan, you can have lots of different sub-accounts. So you'll notice that I'm in the Stripe demo account, and I can tell because I'm right up here. And I can switch into different accounts using the drop-down here. I can also go to my sub-accounts page to see all of my sub-accounts, and I could switch into the right account this way. If you haven't created your sub-accounts yet where you want to start buying your numbers, you can click Add a New Account here instead of the account that you want to start buying numbers in. Now, again, this only applies for the agency or enterprise plans. If you're on the starter or pro plan, you don't have to worry about this because you've got one account and you're always going to be in the right account. So once you've verified that you're in the right account, you'd go to Buy Numbers, and you would want to search for your numbers. And you'll notice that you can search by area code if you want local numbers. You can search for toll-free numbers. You can enter your city and search for numbers that way. For example, I could search for numbers here. I can also use the country drop-down to choose which country I want to find numbers in. Now, you'll notice as you search around, you may run into situations where you can't find the number you're looking for. Like maybe, for example, you are looking for a true 800 number. You don't want 888, you want 800. you'll find that we often are out of 800s because we don't regularly stock them. But we do have a relationship with a company called 800 for All, and you'll see this referenced here. Basically, you can buy an 800 number on their site. They have tons of 800 numbers. They also have vanity numbers with very particular words spelled out in the numbers, and then you can transfer that number to us. There's a porting process you can go through. It takes about 3 to 5 business days, and the numbers will be running on our system. So if you do ever run into that with 800 numbers, I wanted to mention that. But in general, you should find that you're able to find the numbers you need. If you're looking for a local number, like a particular area code, and for some reason you're having a hard time finding it, definitely shoot us an email, and you'll see this contact us link here. It could just be that we're temporarily out of it. Our inventory is literally changing every minute, so we sometimes run out of area codes, and we just have to get the next restock from our carriers. So we can let you know when we can expect to have those back in for you. Also, I'll mention here on this page porting. If you do have any phone numbers that you're already using for tracking that you want to port to us to use it for tracking, you can definitely do that. And it typically takes about 2 to 4 weeks, so you want to kind of just keep that lead time in mind. And if you want to start that process, you would go into the numbers menu and you go to port numbers. And this is where you'd start the request process. And you can paste a list of numbers here if you want to port a whole bunch of them. This will email you a confirmation after you submit this, and you'll get a letter of authorization that you have to sign and send back to us so that we can start the porting process. So I'm going to hop back over to buy numbers here, and I'll go ahead and find some numbers that I want to buy. All right, and so let's say I want to start just by buying about 5 numbers now. And you can buy as many or as few as you want. You can always come back here to add numbers. I mentioned earlier that you just need 2 pieces of information for your numbers just to at least get them started. You need to enter a receiving number, and you'll notice if you have previously ever entered any for the account, it'll give you those as options. And then you need to choose a tracking source, which again is the advertising channel. You'll notice in this drop-down as you start to type things in, we have most of the advertising channels you'd want to track already pre-programmed into your account. So especially in the online sort for your online advertising sources, I'd recommend trying to pick one that already exists. And the reason for that is because we've already programmed it, and when you put that tracking script on your website, it's going to immediately know how to recognize these visitors. I will show you how to create a custom source. There's a bit more legwork involved in it. You can definitely do it, but I recommend, particularly for the straightforward sources, try to choose one of these. So, for example, if you're tracking organic, maybe you're doing some social media. You want to do a number for your Facebook visitors. You also may want to do some catch-all numbers. So, for example, maybe you want to do a number that's associated to the referral source. This would mean that this number shows to basically everybody else who comes to the site from another place. So people not coming from Google or Facebook, but coming from anywhere else. That's nice because I'll show you in the reporting, you're going to see the specific breakdown of all the referring URLs that are leading to phone calls. So it's a good catch-all, and you can start to see which referring URLs are leading to the most calls for you. Another good catch-all would be direct. Direct would be this number showing to anybody who just directly goes to your website. So not coming from somewhere else on the web, but going directly to the site. That's also a good kind of catch-all number you want to have if you want to make sure that you've got complete coverage of all of your website visitors seeing tracking numbers. So again, you can kind of look through these sources and pick the ones that you like, and then you'll click Buy Numbers, and at that point the numbers are ready to go. So one of the first things you probably want to do once you purchase your numbers is go to the tracking numbers page. This page is where you can go to just make sure that everything looks right for your numbers. So you've got your tracking numbers listed, you've got your source, and you can always change this information if you need to. You've got your routing, so this is the basic kind of receiving number that you entered in that last screen of where the calls are going to be routed, and I'll show you how you can make adjustments to this. And then this next column here is target number. So I want to explain this a little bit. A target number is the phone number that we should be looking for on your website to replace. So you only need to have a target number for any of your tracking numbers that are tracking online advertising sources. And the importance of this is that it tells our tracking script what number to look for on your website. And you can think of it as the number that's hard-coded on your website. And you may have more than one number hard-coded on your website. So if that's the case, you just want to make sure that you go into target numbers here. and that you enter all of those numbers here so that our code is sure to look for those numbers and to replace them with the right tracking numbers. One other nice thing about this is you may have a situation where maybe your website lists a toll-free number and a local number, and you want both of those numbers to swap to tracking numbers. You could have them each listed as a target number, and you could have two sets of tracking numbers. So you could have a set of 410 numbers that replace this number and a set of toll-free numbers that replace this number. So the target numbering system allows you to have flexibility around what you want to replace on your website. You may also have a phone number that's on your website that you don't want us to replace, so that you would just not add that as a target number and our script would not replace it. So that's the target number concept. So if you want to make adjustments to the routing for your number, there's a few different places you'll want to check to do that. So the first place is you can click Edit next to your tracking number, and you're going to see the receiving number that your calls are being routed to. You can assign as many receiving numbers as you want. So you may want to have, maybe you want to have calls go to your office and to your cell phone. You can add a new receiving number as well if you need to add a new one that's never been entered into this account. You can also choose how you want to route calls to the multiple receiving numbers. So do you want to just ring both your office and your cell at the same time? Or do you want to sequentially dial one and then the other? Or do you want to round robin, which is evenly distribute calls between the two? So you can think about these different scenarios where maybe you're routing calls to a sales team, where maybe you want to kind of load balance how many calls each salesperson gets. You could use round robin. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you're routing to multiple receiving numbers. You also have the ability to schedule. So maybe you want calls going to your office during the day and your cell phone at night. Well, you could come in here and choose when you want everything to be running or not running. So maybe you have your office number running during the week and you have your cell phone running during the weekend. You can save that. So that's your scheduling. You also have some other kind of advanced routing options. So you'll notice here in the numbers menu, you've got voice menus. So this would present your callers with different key press options. So you can think of it like an IVR menu, and it gives them different key press options. And you don't have to have this on in your account, but it's an option if you or any of your clients want to have this as a routing tool. You'll notice when you set up a voice menu, you're going to enter in your voice prompt. So this is what you want to tell the callers to do, and then you'll key in your different key presses. So when somebody presses 1, what do you want us to do? And you can choose what you want us to do when somebody presses 1. What do you want us to do when somebody presses 2? Then you'll notice there's lots of different options here. You could chain together many voice menus. You could geo-route your callers. You could send a text message after they press a key press. So you have lots of different options there. So that is found within the voice menus. You've also got, in terms of routing, you've got geo-routing. So geo-routing is another routing option, and I'll show you what geo-routing is, how that's set up. Geo-routing is if you have a situation where maybe you've got a national business or a regional business with lots of different office locations, and you want to route callers to the closest office location to that caller. This system will do that, and you can choose which tracking numbers should be included, and then you can choose how you want to route the callers. So, for example, do you want to ask them to enter their zip code and then route them, or do you want to try to have the system guess where they are and route them that way? And you can choose, do you want us to route based on zip code or area code? So geo-routing is another kind of advanced routing option. And then finally, in terms of routing, call queues is another option. And again, this is just something optional that you have as a feature that's available. Call queues are used for the scenario where you have lots of different people you want to route calls to, and you can, like agents, such as like in a call center, and you want to be able to route them based on a schedule and in a particular order. So you can add those agents to our system, you can set up schedules for them, and then you can configure your queue. So your queue is, which tracking numbers are included, which agents are included, and then how do you want to set up the schedule? So what is a particular schedule for this queue? What will happen in the call queue scenario is agents accept calls by when they pick up the phone, they press 1 to take the call, and then at that point, no other agent can take the call. So you always will have just one agent being assigned to the call, and our system immediately recognizes that and assigns that call to that agent in our system. And I'll show you, we have a number of reports that are agent specific that'll show you reporting by agent. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you in the kind of number setup menu here is call settings. And call settings is a good place. I definitely would recommend everybody go to just check and make sure it looks right for your numbers. This is where you're going to manage things like call recordings and whispers. And this, even if you're using just a very basic routing setup, you definitely want to make sure you check this. By default, we have call recording turned on for all of your calls, but you can turn that off if you want to. And by default, we also play a recording to your callers when they first call your numbers that announces call recording. You can change this message to say whatever you want. You can just type it in. If you want to instead upload your own audio, like in your own voice, or maybe you have a professionally recorded audio, you could use this feature here to either call now to record your audio right now or to upload a previously recorded audio. And you just delete this text here to use your uploaded audio. Also on this page, you've got some things where you can turn on and off caller ID, and you can turn on receiving whispers. Receiving whispers announce something to the receiving party, and the caller does not hear these whispers. So this would be if you want to announce the source of the call, or maybe you want to announce call recording to your receiving party. You could use receiving whispers here to do that. So again, that's all found within the call settings area here. So after you go through this menu, usually what the next step would be is to install the tracking code. And so I talked about this tracking code that sits on your website. This is where you find it, and it's, again, right here in tracking code. You'll install this on your website, and you only have to do it once. And then at that point, your numbers will start dynamically appearing to your website visitors. What you'll probably want to do next is do some testing of how to test that your dynamic number swapping is working. So we have some links here to some guides of how you can test that your number swapping is working. Like this one in our knowledge base is a good one, and it helps you kind of walk through testing your source swapping. It gets tricky because remember, we're cooking you. So if you have come to your website before through a source that we're not tracking, then you're not going to see the number swapping. So you'll have to use something like Chrome Incognito or Safari Private Browsing to test that the number is swapping, because you have to come to your site and without any cookies. So this article kind of walks you through how to do that. So after you've got your tracking code installed, you're then ready to start viewing your calls and to start viewing the reporting for your calls. Now, before we could jump into reporting, I wanted to mention two other kind of features that we have that are related to your tracking numbers that you might be interested in setting up. The first one is text messaging, which you'll see right here. Your tracking numbers can receive text messages on them. And right now this is limited to just local tracking numbers in the U.S., but we are expanding this to include toll-free numbers as well. So we're always working on expanding kind of, especially internationally, how we can enable text messaging for different numbers. But right now this is for U.S. local numbers, and you can enable U.S. local numbers to receive text messages. And what happens is anytime someone texts you on your tracking numbers, you would see it appear here in your text log. So it's a special log of your text messages. What a lot of people do is they go into text settings and they set up what we call triggers. And triggers are like automatic things that happen whenever a text message comes into one of your tracking numbers. And it's set up so that you can ensure that you don't miss that text message, because you might not always remember to come in here to look at your text log. So the different triggers you can take include things like sending an SMS reply back to the person, forwarding the text message to someone else, maybe to like your sales manager or something like that, or sending an email. So maybe you want like everybody on your team to get an email every time you guys get a text on your tracking number. You could set that up here. So those triggers are really helpful, again, for just kind of staying on top of your text messages and making sure the person is responded to. Now, another kind of ancillary service that we have that I wanted to mention is our Form Reactor service, and that's found within account settings here, and it's Form Reactor. Form Reactor is basically a click-to-call form. You can put this click-to-call form on your website, and as people fill it out and hit the button, you immediately get a phone call. And I'll click Edit here next to the test one I have set up, and you'll see what's involved in the setup of them. So you're going to choose which fields you would like in the form, and you'll see a preview of your form over here on the right. You'll see the embed form code here. This is the code that you'd embed into your website to put your form. And then you've got lots of different options about how you want the associated call to be handled. So what will happen is, as I mentioned, when people hit call me, they're going to get a phone call. And your salesperson is going to get a phone call, or whoever you want on your team to get a phone call will get one. And when your salesperson picks up the phone, it's going to say, you have a new form lead, press 1 to be connected to them. And at that point, then it's connected to the person who just filled out the form. You can choose to have it handled a little bit differently. Like maybe you have business hours where you want that to happen, and then after hours you don't want that to happen. You don't want a call to immediately be initiated. You'll just have your salespeople call that person back in the morning. You could do that. So you'll see those different options here. Now, all of your form reactor submissions are going to appear right in your log, right alongside your calls. So you'll see them right in here alongside your other calls. And they'll have a special form icon and a special color. And when you click the detailed view over here, you'll see all the fields that they filled out within that form. So that way, when you get in the next morning, or if you ever want to look back at your form, you can always find them and call them back. And you can always use filtering to get down to just your form leads. For example, you could just have your form entries checked here if you just wanted to see your form reactor leads. Like we have one here, and so you'll see this was a Google paid visitor who filled out your form here. So that's Form Reactor. I wanted to mention that. Both text messaging and Form Reactor are fairly new for us, so those are areas where we're continuing to get feedback, and we'll be rolling out additional features related to them. So let's talk a little bit about reporting now. All your reporting is found within the reporting menu and within the calls menu. So I'll start with the call log because that is the most detailed view of your phone calls. So as calls start coming in, you're going to see them appear here in your log. In each of your sub-accounts, if you're on an agency account, each of them are going to have a call log. So your clients, if you give them access to their sub-account, they can see all the calls for their sub-account. So each row is a phone call, and as I mentioned, if they are a form lead, they'd have a little form icon here. So you'll notice these are all phone calls. And on the left, you're going to see the caller name and their information. You're going to see the source they came through. And you're going to see in the middle here the detail of the visitor who is making this phone call. For your offline advertising channels or your off-site channels like TV and print where there's not a website visitor to match to the call, this column is just going to be blank for those calls. But if you click the detail of this, you'll see what's reported here. You've got referring URL, the keyword this person used if they came through the search engine to your site, landing URL. And then for your pay-per-click callers, you're going to see this information as well. So this is the ad, the campaign, the keyword. This information is pulled in using our integration with Google. And so while all the information in green immediately appears for your calls, this information typically takes an hour or two to populate because it's coming through our integration with Google. So you'll see all of that for your call. You'll also see here you can score your calls. So if you want to place a score next to them, like maybe you want to use a star rating, or if you want to mark them as converted or not converted, you can do that. And this information here feeds into different reports that we have available. You can also use this to associate different agents to the call, or you could just choose this set agent. And this will search through the different agents that you have in your account, and it can associate the agent to it. If you're using call queues, this will automatically be populated for your calls, so it'll automatically be assigned to the correct agent. If you open up the detailed view of this call here using that pencil, you'll see here this is where you can input notes and tags for your calls. And tags are especially helpful because all of our reports are filterable by tag. So a lot of our customers use tags as a way to classify their calls. So maybe you want to use, good lead, bad lead, or maybe you want to use different kind of product lines that you have as tags. You can have any kind of tags that you want. You can also see the history of this caller. So if Bertrand had ever called before, you would see those calls listed here. And then also, if you ever need to call this person back, you can always use the call icon here to call these people back. It initiates a call through your browser. So you could just call them right here from your computer using this call icon here. Those calls are all tracked on our system as well. Outbound calls, any outbound calls that you make from our system are denoted using a phone with an out icon, with an out arrow. So you'll notice they have a different color, and you'll see them differently here in the log. You can also make outbound calls by using the orange phone icon up here on the right. So a lot of our customers want to try to have all their outbound calls, maybe all their outbound sales calls tracked within our system as well. You would just need to have your sales folks use this icon here to make those calls using their computers, and that'll be all tracked here within our system. The call log also, I'll just mention, is all exportable, so you can always use these export features that are in the top right of our reports to export them. If you ever need to just get them out into Excel or something like that, you can definitely do that. Now, as you think about kind of rolling all of this data up into the series of reports that we have, we've got a number of different options. So call reports are kind of the next level up in the data, and along the left here is where you'll see all the cuts of the calls. So you'll see things like your calls broken down by landing page, where you'll see all the different landing pages and the calls. You'll also notice, in addition to some of the stats you'd probably expect to see, you also see things like your call scores and your revenue. And that's populated using those areas of the call log I showed you, where you can have your folks entering in sales and entering in scores for the calls. So that will populate based on that. You've also got calls by referring host, if you'd like to see that, calls by tag. So I don't have a tagging used yet in this demo account, but you'd see all your calls listed here by tag. On the bottom left here are your pay-per-click specific reports. So this is where you'll see your calls broken down by campaign or by ad group, etc. So you'll see all these different cuts of your calls. Now, one question that people often have as they're looking at these is, this is great. How do I get all this information out into like Google Analytics, for example? And so I want to show you that real quick while we're on this reporting topic. To integrate your account with Google Analytics, you'll want to come into Account Settings, and you'll notice we have different integration options. And Metrics is where Google Analytics is. You'll notice I've already linked this one to a UA code in Google Analytics, but you'll go through the linking process. You'll click Link This Account. It'll verify which email address you want to use to search through Google Analytics, and it'll look at all the Google Analytics UA codes that you have admin access to, and you choose which one you want to link this account to. You've also got some tuning options about how you want to sync things over to Google Analytics here, and you've got some advanced options as well. So once you link the accounts, you can click over here and you'll see what's going to start happening. So we're going to start sending calls into Google Analytics as events. So you'll start to see all of your inbound phone calls appear in Analytics as events. What a lot of people do is they create goals in Google Analytics that complete around our events. And it takes just a second to do that. If you're familiar with Google Analytics, you've probably gone through this process. But this document here, this Learn How document, walks you through how to do this. The importance of creating a goal in Google Analytics is that once that goal starts completing around our calls, you can then choose to have those goal completions sync into AdWords automatically as a conversion. So you'll notice there's like a 3 or 4 step process here that you need to go through. Typically takes like 5 minutes to do the initial part of it. Then you have to wait a few days because it takes a few days for Google to get everything caught up. Once you have your goals start completing, you'll notice this option appears in your AdWords account within the conversions area where you can choose to have those analytics goals imported automatically as conversions. So at that point then you've got calls showing up in our system, you've got calls showing up in Google Analytics as events, and then you've got calls showing up in AdWords as conversions. So you can have it flow through all 3 systems. And again, that's all found within Account Settings. Now, while I'm here also, let me just show you some of the other metrics and CRM systems we integrate with. In terms of metrics, you've got Kissmetrics and Optimizely as 2 other providers that we integrate with. And then for your CRM systems, if you or any of your customers want to have calls showing up within CRMs, these are the systems that we currently work with. So you can choose one of these, and each one kind of has a slightly different process for how they sync the information in. But you'll see descriptions for each of them. So like, for example, with Salesforce, when a call comes into our system, we look in your Salesforce account. We try to find that person. If we find them, then we add that call as an activity, and we include all the information like the link to the audio recording, the source that came through, the keywords, all that information. And if we don't find that person over in Salesforce, then we create a new lead or contact for you. So as you go through the linking process here, there's a lot of different kind of questions our system asks you about how you want the link to work. And so definitely you can spend some time going through that. Our team is also happy to help with your Salesforce integration as sometimes it takes a little tuning to kind of get it exactly the way you want it. So if we look in the reporting menu, we went through call reports. Let me show you the overview report real quick. Let me hop over into my demo account. And the overview report is kind of the highest level view of the data. So this is just a snapshot report that you'll find in each of your sub-accounts. And it just gives you a good kind of visual snapshot of what's going on within the account. So that's the overview report. It has the same filtering options. My demo account doesn't have it, but your accounts all have a PDF option, so you'll be able to PDF this report. This is actually a few of our reports have PDF options. Most of them, when you do the export, it's exporting into Excel. This one has a PDF option in your account, so you can export it into a PDF. That way, if you want to print it out or anything like that, you can do it. Now, if you ever want to schedule reports to be sent out, there's two different ways that you can do it. And it's found within the reporting menu. The first option would be to go to Manage Reports. In your accounts, you all have the overview report, which I just showed you, as kind of the first default report that you can schedule to be mailed. You can reports here and go through the wizard to add a custom report that can be scheduled out on regular intervals. The overview report, for example, you'll see that listed here, and you'll see I have a schedule set up for it already where it runs the first of the month. But you can always edit the schedule, create new schedules, and you'll see here that you can get very specific about how you want this email to be sent out and who it should go to. Now, you also have the option to schedule other reports using the notifications area. You can think of notifications as kind of more not like PDF reports, but they're more email or text message reports. So I'll show you the different kinds that you can set up here. These are often very helpful for advertising agencies if they're looking to report to their clients how their campaigns are going. They use either the daily digest or the weekly digest. They would be basically an email that go out at the end of every day or the end of every week, and they, in the body of the email, have a listing of all the phone calls that have come in during that time period, and they include like the caller's name, their phone number, the link to the audio recording for the call, when the call came in. So all the information is right in the body of the email. So it's nice for clients because they can quickly open it up and just see a quick snapshot of how the day went or how the week went. And if they missed any calls, they can also, right from their email, just click and listen to the audio recordings. So that's the daily and weekly digest. You also have other options like an SMS notification. This would be if you want to get a text message after each call. You could set that up. And then similarly, email notification is if you would like to get an email after each call. And you can get very specific about when you want this to be triggered. So maybe you want to only get it when you get a call through Google Organic, or maybe only when you get a call through a particular tracking number even. So you get specific about how you want these notifications to be sent. And again, that's all found within the notifications area of reporting. One other report I wanted to show you is the agency dashboard. So if you're in the agency or enterprise plan, you have this other dashboard which is showing you the agency level view of the activity across your accounts. So this is a good place to come to see kind of an overview for a date range of how the call volume is going and how much it's cost you, your agency. And you'll see a breakdown of sub-account by a sub-account down here as well. And there's quick links that you can use to hop into your sub-accounts from this page as well. And that's, again, all found here within the agency dashboard. So those are the major reports to be aware of. Within the call menu, I showed you the call log. You've also got a map view of your calls that you can look at, and you can go to export calls as well if you just want to quickly export all of the calls coming into your account. So I want to talk now about some other settings for you to be aware of for your accounts. In the upper right here are most of your kind of settings and administration areas. So for example, I showed you this early on, but if you ever want to just go and see all the sub-accounts within your account, you can come here to this list and you can hop into the accounts this way. You can also add a new account this way as well. So when you need to add a new sub-account, you can name it and then choose whether or not the charges for that account should go on your agency credit card, if you're on the agency or enterprise plan, or if you want to add new billing information for that particular sub-account. Also within this settings menu up here, you can do all your user management. So this is nice because you have various levels of access that you can give people, and you can be very specific about which sub-accounts you want them to have access to and what level of access they should have. So if I click Edit next to one of these, you're going to see all the information that you can put in for your users when you create users. If you ever need to send a password reset to one of your users or resend the welcome email, you can do that from here. And then you've got the different roles that you can choose for them. So there's 5 different levels of access, and they range from agency administrator, which has the highest level of access, and that would be across your whole agency and all sub-accounts, down to agent. Agents can only view the call log, and in particular, only calls in the call log that have been routed to them. So as you click through these, you'll see descriptions of what each level has. In an agency situation where you're wanting to give access to your clients, typically what they'll do is they'll give access to their clients as like Report Manager, for example, and then you can choose the particular sub-accounts that you want to give them access to. A Report Manager can view all the reports, view all the calls, but they don't have access to edit tracking numbers or purchase new tracking numbers. So it's a good way to give a lot of access to your clients, but that way there's no risk of like tracking numbers being, configured differently or anything like that. So that might be a good suggestion as Report Manager. So that's, again, all found within Manage Users there. Now, also, I want to look at agency settings for just a moment. If you are a customer that's on the agency or enterprise plan, you're going to see all these options as well. Within the agency and enterprise plan, you'll notice that you have these options for white labeling. And white labeling is basically putting your branding on our product. So you'll see here there's 2 different settings for that. For the agency plan, you can white label on one of our call tracking app domain. So, for example, you could put your agency or whatever name you want to have in your subdomain, youragency.calltrackingapp.com. That would be where your customers or whoever's using our system would come to log into our system. So you can white label on the agency plan using the subdomain. If you're on the enterprise plan, you can white label our product on your domain. So people would go to your domain to log into our product. And this is the form you'd fill out to start that process with our engineers. What they'll do is they're going to work with you to configure the necessary DNS changes so that the system is available on your domain. So you've got your white labeling options here. You also have, as an enterprise customer in particular, you've got a number of billing options for your sub-accounts and for your clients. You've basically got 3 ways that you can bill your customers. You can have all of their usage go through your agency available balance in the upper right here, and you can just bill them back however you want through your own billing process. Or when you add them as a sub-account, you can choose to put that sub-account on their credit card, and so they would just pay Call Tracking Metrics directly for the usage of just their sub-account. Or the third option would be to use our Stripe integration. And our Stripe integration allows you to charge your customers back for their usage of Call Tracking Metrics at marked up rates. So you would still pay Call Tracking Metrics for their usage, but then you can use Stripe to charge your client's credit card at whatever price you want for their usage of our service. So maybe you pay us $2 a number, but maybe you want to charge your customers at the end of the month like $10 a number or whatever you want to charge them. It's all done through Stripe, and so you just need to have a Stripe account, and Stripe is a credit card processing company. So you'd set up an account with Stripe, and then we would send all the information to Stripe that their system needs on a regular basis so that you can process credit card transactions through Stripe. And it's all done automatically through this integration, and you can go through the process of setting up your marked up rates and how often you want to bill them and all of that. So that's an option as well for the enterprise customers in particular. So those are most of the things that you're going to find in the agency settings area. You'll also want to get familiar with our help menu. And so here is the help menu here where you can find things like our contact information. You can find this Getting Started page here. And this is nice because this allows you to kind of go through a checklist of some of the things we'd recommend that you set up for your account. And it's specific to the plan that you're on. So you can checklist, go through this and see which items you already have taken care of and which ones you might still need to do. So it's kind of a recap of some of the things that I've talked about here, and you can go through and use this. And then I also recommend that occasionally you take a look at our blog. This is where we post kind of updates to our product and updates to the industry that might be affecting your call tracking that you might want to take a look at on a regular basis. We do send emails out occasionally if we're making like a big change to the system or a big announcement to the product, so you'll definitely start getting those as well. So I wanted to make sure, as I promised at the beginning, to leave plenty of time for questions. So that wraps up the bulk of kind of the major components of the system. I'm sure it leaves you with a lot of work to do on your side and a lot of things to kind of think about. But I wanted to definitely see if there are any questions that anybody had, if there's anything that I have not covered.
Well, this is Jerry Strickland. I'd just like to say I'm surprised about the depth of the product. That looks like I've got a lot of research to do how to use it better.
I know people often kind of walk away from the session feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I've often heard that, people have told me maybe you should break this up into like 3 different sessions, like the beginning, intermediate, and then yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot you can do with the system. So keep us posted as you need help getting through it.
Well, we're not doing this on an agency level. It's just for one business, a dental office. But I can see where we've got several tracking numbers, but we've not really used the dynamic tracking scripts and things to help track, because we have lots of things that kind of comes back to the website, and we've got different numbers on different advertising, and we need to have a better idea of what's driving what where. And I see now we can do that. I didn't really understand we could do that. I think that's going to be very useful, because just it's hard to grab a hold of all that data, and it's amazing that you can do that.
Yeah, it is. It's you can get a lot of information out of this, and it's just a matter of kind of how to absorb it all.
I guess also one thing we're thinking about doing is exporting some of the calls, which of course I forget what format they're in, to like burn them on CDs for certain people to help train them to do better on the phone calls when they're talking to customers. I guess you guys have them on. What is the when you play them off right off the website? They're what's it called? I can't think of what it is.
Yeah, we have them in WAV and MP3.
MP3.
And you can also, like, if you ever wanted to do that in a, like, rather than doing it one by one, you could also always use our export, and the export file has links to all of the MP3 files, so that way you could kind of quickly get them to it. But if you're playing your audio here, you can use this pop-out, and this gives you the direct link to the file.
Okay. I just didn't know if I wanted to give it to them on a CD where they could play it in a regular audio player, if I need to take it from the MP3 to some other format.
I think it usually should be fine. MP3 or WAV should usually, be okay for those types of. I'm not sure exactly which program you're using to put it together, but usually one of those formats should work.
Okay.
Yep.
I can see training purposes on some of the calls would be a good idea, and I don't know how many other customers think about that, but like you said, you have a recording there that the for quality purposes, and definitely sometimes your people taking the calls need some training, and you listen to it and you say, well, you missed this, you should have done that, and so you can help actually use that to train somebody. That's very helpful, because they'll be able to communicate with the customer in a most efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how much stuff. I guess I don't have to worry about it if I'm not at an agency level. Do you guys have a lot of agencies that use your service?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say our client base kind of falls half and half. Half are businesses and half are advertising agencies.
Okay.
Yep.
Lori, it's Christine.
Hi.
And I've just set up it's an enterprise type of account. And I spent some time yesterday looking through the Getting Started and Help sections, and really good information there. But we do have multiple websites. I think we're going to pilot just on one to start. But I read something about a bridge number, and I'm wondering if you could just explain that to me.
Yeah.
How that works, because it sounds like maybe I might want to try that.
So usually bridge numbers are used if for some reason, it's actually pretty rare that you would ever need to use a bridge number. Which scenario are you thinking you'd need a bridge number for? It's usually if you need to do some kind of complicated routing, and you need to have like a bridge number that sits between our number and your receiving number.
Okay, no, I don't think we need any special routing. When I read it, I thought like if we start with the one website and set up the call, everything that way, and then if I need to add another sub-account, and I wasn't sure if I needed to consider bridge numbers or not. If not, if it's just straightforward in each sub-account, I think we'll likely have a sub-account for each website.
Yeah, you could definitely do that if you're going to have, because you'd probably have different tracking numbers that are displaying on those different websites. Then you probably wouldn't need to have a bridge. The bridge is, usually if you're just trying to like link numbers together for some kind of routing purpose. If you have them in different sub-accounts, you'll have the different tracking code that sits on each of the websites as well.
Okay, that's all I need then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, is anybody? Okay, this is Jeff. I have a question on the text on the texting, this SMS. We were on the Enterprise Edition and just trying to get everything started here. I understand we're going to do a charge by per call, assign the tracking number to each of our different companies, and we're going to charge a certain fee for each category. An example, plumber, roofer, etc. If somebody texts, can we charge the same fee per text, or how does they? I guess I'm really not understanding how we would. We're going to be using Stripe, of course. How does that work with if they want to text instead of making a phone call?
Yeah, so I'm just looking in here to see. So if you're using Stripe, you're going to want to come into our agency settings to set up your price schedules, which you may have already done. So that's found right here. And this is where you're kind of telling the system what you want to charge your customers. And you can have multiple price schedules. And so you may want to have like one schedule for your premium customers and one schedule for your like basic customers, and you can have multiple ones. And let me just open one of these up to just double check that text messaging is within these.
We're going to have pricing based on each category. So a plumber will have a certain fees for that number, and if a plumber does electrical work or something like that, and he's under as an electrician as well, per se, we'd assign a different phone number to that with a different fee. So that's kind of how we're doing ours.
Okay, yeah, that would work. So you would name your price schedules as different categories, and you'll notice when you set up your price schedules, you can set prices per call or per number and per text message. So like the question you asked, where you want to figure out what you want to charge your customers, you can plug in different markups here to see kind of what you'd want to charge them. So you could mark up your text messaging cost by a percentage, similar just to the way that you'd mark up a number or a call based on the number of minutes. So this scheduling interface or price scheduling interface is where you'd come in to basically determine what you want to charge them for each of these categories.
So by the percentage, that's not going to work for a text then if we're doing a flat fee per call for the that's what because I did look at this and I didn't see that as an option. So in other words, if we charge $30 for a roofing lead for a phone call, there's not a flat fee for a text. It's a percentage.
It is per text. So it is per text, yeah. So I think it would work for you because for text messaging, you'll notice if I show you the pricing here, each text message is just charged a flat rate. So like if you're on our enterprise plan, it's 1.2. So if you wanted to do like a percentage markup on there, you could do that. So like if you want to just do 100%, this is what your customer cost would be. It would be 2.5 cents for that text message.
So we'd have to get in the thousands of percent or 10,000%.
Yeah, and you'll see like if you, as you kind of start to plug in the different percentages, you can see kind of what the cost would be.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can kind of play around with this and see, what fee you would want to charge them per text message.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Any other questions?
The form reactor, is that working right now? For some reason, my developer said he had an error, but when I went to account, it didn't look like he even tried, but he's saying he did. So I don't know if he was trying to do it outside of my account or not. But is that? And he said it was in beta testing. But is it all working properly right now, or was there a problem maybe a week or 2 or 3 weeks ago, possibly, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I know we have a lot of customers using it, but definitely feel free to submit a ticket or to send an email to info@calltrackingmetrics to let us. He can let us know what the issue is, and we definitely will work with him on it. We spend a lot of time working with people on Form Reactor because, like I said, it is kind of a newish product, so we definitely want feedback. If people are running into issues, definitely let us know.
Okay. I'm in the 5-day wait period as far as getting.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, now we can, yeah.
At that point, I need to integrate it with Salesforce. Is that something y'all would walk me through on that, or is that a pretty easy integration?
Yeah, it is. I'll show you quickly an account that has Salesforce kind of set up. What you'll do is you'll come into your settings, and then you will come into Salesforce. And you'll see kind of the different options you have. As you go through it, definitely let us know. That's part of, like, you'll notice with your enterprise plan, you've got a setup fee. That's part of why that setup fee is there, because for the white labeling and for the Salesforce, you're definitely going to have questions as you go through this. So if you've already been working with Todd or somebody on our engineering team, I know Todd usually works on most of the enterprise setups, definitely let him know so he can help you tune the Salesforce integration, because you'll notice here there's lots of different options about how you want things to sync back and forth between the systems.
Okay. This may be a question for Todd, or I don't know who else to turn to, unless I turn to Salesforce this, but we're going to have somebody, obviously it's this, let me know if this is a question for y'all, that's something that you can help me with or not, or who I would turn to, is I understand that with Advanced Caller ID, somebody calls in, it populates the person that's making the phone call, but in this case it'd be a homeowner, and then it's going to go to the call tracking is going to be a contractor. Is there any way of it, I don't know the language, but to show in Salesforce, is there any code on your end that I need to show that it shows up that there was activity both on the caller and the receiver in Salesforce?
What do you mean by activity?
In other words, that in the whoever made the call, the homeowner in this case, made a call to XYZ plumber, and that it shows up in the history somehow. Shows up in the history of that, and then as well it shows up in the history that it in the person that it called, the plumber.
I see what you're saying, yeah. So because typically what happens is we look it up in Salesforce based on the caller, and we associate the activity to the caller. But you're wondering if we can also associate that activity to the person who accepted the call. Yeah, that's probably a question it's probably going to be a combination of you're going to need to work with Salesforce to get your custom objects set up right, because it sounds like you're going to need to have kind of your object set up right in Salesforce so that you've got the right fields. And then what you'll do is you'll do what we call custom object mapping. because you're going to map our receiving number column to whatever object you've set up in Salesforce for that person, the plumber that call was routed to.
It's called custom object.
Mhm.
What was you said custom object what?
It's a custom object. You can think of it like it's like a field in Salesforce. And so, you can set up these fields in Salesforce, and in our system, you can tell us like which components you want us to be sending to that custom object. So, and you'll see this when you go to the Salesforce integration page on our system. That you can map different fields of information in our system to your custom object fields in Salesforce.
Custom object field. Okay. All right. Okay. So I guess I just hold off on that. That's I guess sometime in the next week or two. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Well, I know we are a few minutes over, so just want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon. Hopefully this session was helpful. And if there were questions that you guys had that we didn't have a chance to address, definitely feel free to call us back, ask for me or anybody here on the team, and we should be able to help you. And we're looking forward to working with all of you. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.